Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the Let's Play Leek. I'm John, as you'll soon find out, as always. And yeah, this is the very first game we're going to be jumping into. This is Kerbal Space Program. This is a game that was just officially released just a few weeks ago. Version 1.0 came out. I've actually been playing this for, it's got to be 2 or 3 years now. I started playing with version 0.15, I think. Let's just say, as we'll soon find out more about this game, but let's just say the only thing that existed was the moon. And there's a lot more than just the moon these days, and a lot more options. I haven't actually played too much of this since version, I don't even remember, 0.7 or so. There's been a lot of stuff added. A lot of stuff that might make for some dangerous space flight, including better aerodynamics and also parts heating up and exploding. But this is Kerbal Space Program. If you're not familiar with it, it is a rocket simulator. You learn rocket science, more or less, with this. A very simplified version of it, but you're going to be sending rockets into space. So I'm going to be doing kind of a Let's Play complete sort of series of this. I'll be releasing videos of this as I do a career, as I climb the ranks of Kerbal science and unlock new parts and go to strange new planets and asteroids and moons and etc. But we're going to jump on into a brand new career. We're going to name ourselves Leek. We can choose our flag, and there's a lot of flags that you can choose from. You can also import custom flags, I believe. We don't necessarily have a custom flag made just yet, but maybe that'll come in a future video. We're going to start off with the Blorbs flag. Why not? And we're going to be doing a career. You can do science, which takes out a lot of the funds and reputation kind of stuff of the career mode, where you have to, you know, have money to make your ships and whatnot. Sandbox also just has everything unlocked. You don't have to worry about funds or science or reputation. It's a place to just kind of screw around. But I like the career. I like the structure. And we're going to start this career. So here we are at the Space Center. Here we have Gene Kerman. He kind of controls the whole thing. He says, "Nice to meet you. I'm Gene Kerman, flight director and your guide for this quick introduction. This is the Space Center. From here you can manage all aspects of the space program. Feel free to have a look around. Hold the right mouse button to move the camera or use the arrow keys. Right click over Space Center facilities to view more about them. Left click when you're ready to head inside. If you need more information, check out the training section." I've got it. So this is our Space Center. This is what we start out with. These buildings look a little bit small and sparse, and that's because we can upgrade them a little bit later. We can't right now. We have 25,000 funds. To upgrade the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, we need 225. One thing we'll need to upgrade relatively quickly is the launch pad. It's just kind of a smoking hole in the ground for now. You probably want something a little bit more robust than that soon enough, though. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to head to Mission Control, this little building here, because this is where we get our contracts. This is how we earn extra money and extra reputation and extra science, by completing contracts for little Gene Kerman here. So the very first contract we're going to do is we're going to launch our first vessel. Now these contracts have a little bit of sort of backstory with them, but the backstories are randomly generated, so it doesn't necessarily make sense. So I won't read any of these out after this one, where you'll find out how kind of strange these sound. "The way we would frequently see a somewhat worse than average accident was making a group of clerks from Kerbal World First Record-Keeping Society feel clearly brilliant. That eventually made it clear that we knew very little about whether we positively needed to find something to do. So as you can imagine, we now need your help." Kind of makes sense. Kind of is the gist of what this contract is about, but clearly randomly generated. So yeah, our first goal is simply to launch our first vessel off the launch pad, or the runway if you want to. You can also build planes in this game, and that's something I'll get to, probably very unsuccessfully, but I'll try it at some point. So we're going to get about 2,000 funds for it. Just by accepting the contract, we'll get another 5,000. If we complete it, we'll get a science, we'll get 2 reputation, and if we fail, which would be pretty hard to do, we'd lose some money. So we're going to accept that contract. We're not going to try to escape the atmosphere just yet, or orbit Kerbin, or gather scientific data from Kerbin. Actually, we could do that, but I'll come back to that a little bit later. But yeah, that's our first contract there. So to launch a vessel, we need to, you know, build a vessel. So we build vessels in the Vehicle Assembly Building. So here we have Werner von Kerman. He's going to explain to us how this works, but we can skip that for now. So this is the Vehicle Assembly Building. These are all the parts that we have access to, and we don't have access to much. We've got a control pod. We don't have any fuel tanks. We have one engine, no command and control. We have some modular girder segments, some wings, a parachute, thankfully, and some mystery goo. These are an add-on that I've installed. I'll go over these a little bit later. It's super useful. But yeah, not much to start out with, unfortunately. So we're going to build a very basic craft. There's our control pod. That's the first step. We need some Kerbonauts to be in there. We have a single engine available, so we're going to stick that on. Now this engine is a RT5 Flea solid fuel booster. Now solid fuel boosters, when you ignite them, they burn. They burn all of their fuel without stopping. There's no throttle. There's no way to go faster or slower. There's no way to stop them until they have fully burned out. The benefit of these is they go really, really, really fast. They go so fast. They are the things that are going to get you potentially out of the atmosphere, or at least a good way through the atmosphere, before you switch to liquid fuel tanks, where you can control the throttle more, because as you start to make more fine-tuned movements, you're going to want to control the throttle. You're not going to want to just go full blast for 10, 20, 30 seconds, a minute, however long the fuel lasts. But this is all we have access to, and we just need to kind of go up and then go down. So we're going to use one single solid fuel booster here. Now, if we went up and down right now, we would smash into the face of planet Kerbin and blow up. But we want our astronauts to live. So we need that thing I saw earlier, the MK16 parachute. And we're going to glue that on top. And that's our first rocket. That is a pretty basic rocket. This is going to get us up, get us down, and our Kerbonaut will live. Now, there's one extra thing you need to do, and that's staging. Down here in the bottom right corner, you can see we have this 0, and we have the engine, and we have the parachute. Staging, you're probably familiar with if you've ever seen a NASA launch on TV or in a TV show or in a movie. Parts of the rocket fall off in different stages, and it gets smaller and smaller, and that's exactly what happens here. So what would happen is if we launched this rocket right now, it has one stage. The rocket's going to go, and the parachute's going to shoot out at the same time. That obviously is not what we want to have happen. We want to have the parachute come out, much, much later, after the rocket has finished, after we've started to fall back down. So we're going to make a new stage, and we're going to drag that rocket engine down to 1. So now what'll happen is the first stage, when we hit space, the rocket will go. Then, whenever we want, we can then shoot the parachute out, and it will kind of save us. Not a huge problem in this one, because it's just a single rocket and a parachute. But in future stages, if you had all of your rockets shooting off at the same time, or rockets falling off while they're still blowing up, things could go wrong. But we're going to launch this as our first ship and finish off that contract. So we're going to go to the launch pad. All right, so here we are on the surface of Kerbin at our launch pad. As I described it, it is a smoking hole in the ground. Someday we'll have fancy command towers and a nice platform for our stuff to fly away from, but for now, smoking hole in the ground. So we have Jebediah Kerman here. He is one of the 3 orange-suited Kerbonauts. Basically, they can't die. They're sort of the mascots. They were the original 3. Nowadays, you can hire astronauts, and it costs reputation, and those astronauts have different abilities and things like that. And in a future video, I'll start hiring new Kerbonauts. But for this one, we'll use good old Jebediah. He's generally seen as a crazy Kerbonaut who does really, really, really strange things. But here we are. We don't have to worry about throttle. We don't have to worry about anything. We just have to worry about blowing that rocket up. So we're going to hit space, and we're going to go up. And there we go. We have left the surface of Kerbin for the first time. We've broken a couple of speed records, and we're done. We're not going to be speeding up anymore because our rocket burned out. This is a very, very, very tiny rocket. I think it was maybe 5 seconds that it lasted there, maybe 6 seconds. But you can see we're still going up a little bit. We haven't lost our forward momentum, although we're about to. Down here, we have just turned around, and now we're falling back towards. The altitude meter up here at the top is showing us now going down 4,200 meters, 4,100 meters, 4,000 meters, and our rocket is now dive bombing the Earth, because of course this is much heavier than the empty part of the rocket. So we're going to fall for a while. We'll open that parachute when we get to about, I don't know, 1,200 or so. We don't need too much time to drop back down to the surface lightly. So here we are, we're about to hit 1,200, and let's hit space. Out comes the parachute, mildly glitchily from the back of the engine, but oh well. And you're going to see that's going to rapidly slow us down to about 6 meters per second, which is totally slow enough to just sort of lightly pop down. And there we go. We've completed our first space flight. Not all that difficult. Rocket science is easy, eh? Not so much. When we need to escape the atmosphere, when we need to go to another planet, when we need to land on another planet and preferably come home, there's going to be a lot more to it. But that is our first rocket launch. So we're going to go up here and we're going to recover that vessel. So with that vessel recovered, we got some stuff. We got some science. We got a piece of data gathered, plus 5 data value, because this rocket has flown, and we got science about that. We have learned what happens to metal ever so slightly above the surface of Kerbin. We'll get a lot more science when we start actively doing science, but we get some science just for getting a vessel back. We got some parts back. We actually got all of our parts back, and so we get funds for that. We can, melt them down, I guess, and then turn them into more parts. So we get some funds back. The more parts of the rocket that you bring back, the more funds you get. Now, of course, the more parts you bring back, the heavier the rocket is, the more parachutes you would need. So there is definitely a trade-off there, safety versus money, basically. And we brought a crew back. Jebediah Kerman came back, so he gets 1 XP. As the XP goes up, their special ability will go up, and I'll dive into that in a later video. So that's our first flight. We're going to do one more flight for this quick video, I think. And we're going to do some stuff. We're going to gather some scientific data from Kerbin. So again, we're not reading the briefing, but basically we need to recover or transmit any science experiment data from Kerbin to achieve this goal. And we're going to get a whole lot of money, 23,000 for it, 61,000 if we complete it, a bunch of science, and a bunch of reputation there. So we'll accept that, and we'll jump back out, and then we will pop on into the vehicle assembly building. We have our rocket here, but we need some science stuff. There is a science experiment we can do without it, but we may as well get some extra science here. This is mystery goo. This is goo that they don't quite know what it is, but they're really interested in what happens to it at various points of the spaceflight. So we're going to lock this on, and we can put one on if we wanted to, but this would make this rocket very unstable because it's not symmetrical. There's more weight on this side. The rocket would tend to fall towards that side, and then you'd have a spiraling rocket out of control. So it's always best to make your rockets as symmetrical as possible. So what I did is I hit X and I changed symmetry mode to make 2 of these guys. So when I placed it, 2 of them were placed perfectly symmetrically. I could do 3, I could do 4, I could do 6, I could do 8 if I wanted to, all very unnecessary. We'll just do 2. So what'll happen is during flight, we will right click on these and we'll have an option to observe the mystery goo, and we'll get some science for observing it in different places. So we're going to launch this ship and see how that goes. So here we are back in our launch pad, and we're actually going to do one of these mystery goo observations here. So we right click and we observe the mystery goo, and we get a science report. The goo doesn't seem to be doing much right now. This is an observation from the launch pad, so we get 3 science for that. So we're going to recover it. If we had an antenna to transmit the science back, we could. We just get a lot less. We get 30% of the value. The reason you might do this is if you have an unmanned probe, for example, that's not coming back to Kerbin, you could have it transmit science from way out in the solar system, and you'll get less science for it, but you can do it repeatedly as you go to new places with that probe, etc., and you don't have to worry about getting that probe back to the surface of Kerbin. But we're going to keep that data because we're coming back to the surface. So we'll keep that data. The next data we'll do is when we get to the top of our flight, so let's go. And there we are. Our very tiny fuel booster has completely died. So we're going to wait till we get, as high as we can here. Our speed's dropping pretty fast, less than 100 meters per second now. So we can observe it now. It'll be the same place, I think, regardless. So we're flying at Kerbin now. We're not in the upper atmosphere or anything. We're still at Kerbin, but we're flying. So the goo jiggles and wobbles. So this is going to get us 7 science. I'm sure anybody could have just walked outside of the science center and observed the goo on the surface, but only Jebediah Kerman can observe the goo from 3,000 meters up. So we're going to dive bomb the planet again. We're going to come back down and deploy our parachute and then look over this goo data that we got and see what we can do with it. Parachute out. That's going to pull our ship around. And it's going to slow right on down to about 6.6, 6.7. So you can see it is going actually ever so slightly faster than it was before. And that's because we slapped on more parts. Mystery goo is actually relatively heavy. The more and more and more parts that you put on, the harder that ship's going to fall. So you're going to need more parachutes, or you're going to need to ditch parts of the ship. But here we are back to the surface. Let's recover that vessel. And here we are. We got a lot of science. So we got the vessel back, and we got less science than we did last time. Science has a diminishing returns. If you just keep doing the same experiment over and over, you get less and less science, because they already know how the mystery goo operates. They already know how a spacecraft handles a 3,000 meter flight. But we got 7 data from that goo for flying, and we got 3 more science from the goo on the launch pad, for a total of 10.8 science. Plus our contract finished, so we got some bonus science. We got our parts back, of course. We got our crew back. Jebediah Kerman just did the same flight he did last time, so he didn't get any experience for that. But we finished that contract. So if we go up here, there's a whole bunch of contracts that we have finished. And I can't seem to... There we go. So we gathered scientific data and got a bunch of rewards. Yes, I have to click there, of course. So we gathered scientific data. We set an altitude record. That got us some money. We set a speed record. That got us some money. A different speed record. That got us some money. And our first contract that we completed. So we got a big dose of money. We got a tiny dose of reputation and a decent dose of science. So we're going to see what we can do with that science now. We're going to go to research and development, this place here. And this is going to show us the science tree. And it's pretty sizable. Back when I first started playing, there was no science tree. You just got all the parts. And then the science tree was introduced, and it was definitely smaller the last time that I played this. There are a lot of things for us to unlock here. And you can see up at the end, we need 550 science to unlock that one. This one here is 1,000 science. So we're going to start over here. So we've got 1 for 5 science and another for 5 science. We've got basic rocketry. That's going to give us a fuel engine and a liquid fuel tank. Those are the ones that we can control the throttle of. We can control the speed. We can, have some control. We're not just lighting a match and waiting until our rocket finishes burning up. But there is also another solid fuel booster. This one's the RT10. The one we had before was the RT5. So it's going to last longer, make us go faster, etc. Down here in Engineering 101, we get some cool parts. We get the MK1 cockpit. This is the first step towards designing planes. It's kind of a jet fighter cockpit. We get the Science Junior. This is a self-contained laboratory. This is kind of like the Mystery Goo in that it's something that you bring up to space or wherever, operate it to get some science, and then bring it back. We get the antenna, which of course is used in probes and things to send data back. And we get one of the most useful pieces that we will ever have, the stack decoupler. This device goes between anything that we want. Normally what we will do is we'll go a rocket, we'll put on a stack decoupler, and then we'll put our cockpit on top. And what will happen is we'll get an option for staging where we can throw that rocket away. Kind of what you see in NASA flights when the rockets fall away and split off and whatnot. And that will allow us to make multi-staged rockets, which will get us into space as opposed to just slightly above Kerbin. So we're going to get both of these. They're both 5 science. We're going to research that. We're going to research that. That leaves us with 16.8 science. These all cost too much. Actually, we could get survivability. Survivability gives us heat shield. We're going to need that when we start re-entering the atmosphere. gives us a landing struts, which, you know, help us with landers. We're not going to be building a lander for a while. We can get radial mount parachutes. These, instead of going on top, which only has a single connector point, they can go on the sides of command modules or whatever. So you can have 2 of these or 3 of these or 4 of these to, you know, let much heavier objects fall without blowing up. And we also get a service bay. This is just for throwing, you know, instruments and tanks and etc. inside of here so that they don't blow up when you bring them back through the atmosphere. But we won't be getting that one just yet because we want to save up for bigger engines and bigger fuel, because those are always good. So that's the first video of Kerbal Space Program with the Let's Play Leek. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you guys are interested in seeing more and seeing me climb the ranks and unlock those science trees, upgrade these buildings, and visit various places. I'll show you a quick note here. So this is Kerbin. This is where we've been flying around. Kerbin has a moon. It has a second moon called Minimus. And then this is the solar system. All of these planets are out here for us to explore. Most of these planets have moons or multiple moons, and there are even asteroids flying around that we can land on and even strap engines to and redirect in case they were going to hit Kerbin. But there is a whole solar system out there for us to explore, and we're going to get to that in later videos for sure. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, definitely let me know. If you have any suggestions for other games to play, let me know. I love games like this, sandbox games, games where stories can kind of organically evolve. But on this channel, you'll be seeing everything, hopefully. I generally love all types of video games. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time.